ever stay up at night wondering if you made the right decisions during that day? Or do you wonder or are concerned about your future, about the choices you have to make, or what might happen to your children, or your health concerns? Or do you know people who just won't make decisions because they want a guaranteed response to the choices that they're going to make? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today on This Life, living with uncertainty.
You know, all this talk about uncertainty, I'm thinking about the economic climate right now, and I think a lot of people have uncertainty. And one of the things I heard this week was someone who doesn't have a job saying, I don't know how we're going to make it. I hope we don't lose the house and lose our cars and everything else.
Hard. Yeah, that's difficult.
Mm-hmm. For the past few months, our family was living with uncertainty because my grandmother, 82 years old, was dying. And, you know, every day I was wondering if I was going to get the call, if I was going to get the call. And finally got the call that she had passed. And the way it worked out, my mother had actually traveled to Texas for the weekend. So when we all got the call, it wasn't this sense of, it wasn't a heavy weight. It was just a sense of, okay, you know, now we know.
It's always hard.
That is hard. I have a friend that's waiting on a biopsy, thinks that it will come out to be, you know, good. But the process of waiting day after day is now become, what seemed like nothing is now becoming difficult because we thought it would be 2 days and now it's turned into 8, and we're like, well, what we thought was nothing is now turning into something you know, in our imaginations.
So it's important to try to find firm footing when the ground seems to be really shaky.
Yeah, well, we have a case I'd like to present here, see what you all think. Dan has been faithful at his job for 10 years as a manager. He has had to make tough decisions, but has tried at every point to be fair with those whom he manages. This is why he is shocked when the VP of the company comes to him on a Friday afternoon.
It's always
Why
on a
is it
Friday.
always on a Friday? And ask him to clear out his desk and be gone by 5 p.m. that evening due to the downturn in the economy and fiscal changes. It used to be they'd give hints, and now they just tell you clear out your desk. Only after he arrives home does it really sink in that he has been laid off and no longer has a job. For the next couple of weeks, he has no desire even to look for work. And when he finally does, there are very few openings in the area where he lives. His wife tries to be supportive, but this change is causing a strain in their already strained marriage, and it will not go away quickly. So that's Dan.
Boy, that sounds really, really hard. Really hard.
It sounds really common right now.
It is.
Yeah.
I know so many people who've lost jobs recently.
Yeah.
And it seems so cold. They're asked just to clear your stuff up, pack up, and leave.
I mean, can you imagine, you've done well at your job, as far as you know, you've been managing other people, and now they're looking through the window as you hear goodbye.
It's an insult. I think
is.
people feel very insulted,
Yeah.
I think sometimes.
And you know, surely they must ask, am I worth no more than that? That it's just a goodbye, not even a party, not even a thank you for all you did?
So there's wounded feelings on top of the uncertainty.
Yes.
In addition to not being sure what you're going to do or how you're going to survive, I think in this situation, Dan feels like he's really been beaten up emotionally.
Yeah. So it makes sense
Unappreciated.
that he wouldn't want to do anything right away because he's hurt, you know, and would want to kind of take some time maybe to curl up a little bit and feel sorry for himself, because to be asked to
bang
leave
some nails or something.
Bend some nails.
Yeah.
But you know, what if the family is in real, it doesn't have a large margin, a financial buffer.
That's right.
He can't be sitting around bending nails.
That's right.
If they don't have, you know, if it really depends on him to pay the bills and to take care of the family.
Well, yeah, right. I mean,
That's
Barbara, what
very-
you're saying
very
is
tough.
correct, but the reality is the shock is probably so big. You know, you've got to take that in. Plus, you've got to think about your career. You don't want to go out and just get another job because will that keep you from getting the job that you want? So there's all this planning that has to happen. Plus, you need monetary. You've got monetary issues, so it's. And as it says, the relationship is already strained, and
It's
that's
already strained.
One of the things I was thinking about as you were sharing this, Carla, was that men and women seem to respond so differently to some things. And I don't know if it's really fair to say men and women, although I know there are gender differences, but I think given people's personalities, we respond to these kinds of crises really differently.
Yes, we do. We do. And I think his wife is trying to be supportive, and again, not trying to make generalizations about, the female or male. Most times, we don't really have an option. Women don't seem to have the option to not do anything. It's just, if this isn't working, then what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we thinking of? Who we're calling, or scheming and plotting about, okay, this is how we're going to do stuff, and we're getting out and we're moving. Again, not all women, but it just seems that we tend to respond to this type of crisis, and we just respond differently than men do. And so for this wife, I think part of her, she wants to be supportive, but she may be going, okay, 2 weeks is enough. Get up and go out and let's get going, because we have bills and things that need to get done.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that, and I'm also aware that when people have no control over what's going on in their lives, they try to find something to feel that they can manage. And I know for myself, when something's happening and I don't know what the outcome is and I'm really nervous about it, I start cleaning the house. My house is never so clean as when I have very little control. It's like, at least I can control my environment.
I buy pencils.
You buy pencils?
I buy pencils. It's something, I've done it since I was in my 20s. It's this feeling of getting organized. So I buy pencils, and I get those books.
Organizer
books. And now it's more expensive because now it's iPads and
That's right.
iPod, all these things. But yeah, no, somehow that relates to me too.
So what I'm hearing saying then is, uncertainty is here to stay. All of us are affected by it. I mean, this case study specifically is about the job, but all of us, in some way or the other,
We're all
are
affected
touched
by it.
and affected by uncertainty.
And we all respond in unique ways, too. I think what I also would like to emphasize is that if we feel that we have no ability to influence what's happening, it causes real despair. And I wonder if, and it also impacts relationships, and people start pulling away from each other. And it sounds like that's what's happening in this marriage.
Well, and I think about my friends who've been trying to get pregnant. Every month is uncertain. Is this month, are they going to? Well, what about this month? What about this month? And there's that constant uncertainty about what's going to happen in their lives, or the uncertainty of, your husband's 10 minutes late or 30 minutes late or an hour late, and we've got women calling the hospitals, to find out if they're dead somewhere, if there's been an accident. Uncertainty is very frightening.
It is.
It's really hard to manage because you have to hold two opposing ideas at the same time in your head. And one of those ideas is, in the case of getting a job, is I know I'm worth something. I know I have the skill set, I know I can do that. And right now I have been treated like I have no value. And those things are hard to reconcile, and to feel that there's nothing, no matter what I do, I still am getting fired. So the fact that I have control over something and I have no control, it's really hard to keep those things in the same mindset.
Well, that's true. Anytime you have two opposing things, it's hard to hold. My child says that they hate me, but I know that I'm a good parent. How do I hold that together?
It's been described as emotional limbo, because when you're not sure what's going to happen, I don't know if you've had this, but I've had this where I'll go on this wave of hope. Oh, I think there's something here. I'm going to pursue this, and then it crashes, and I'm down in the dumps because it didn't work, and then I'm going to try to pursue something else, and oh, here's a glimmer of hope, and oh no, there's a glimmer of despair. And I think people in uncertainty have a really tough time.
What I'm sitting here thinking is, how could this even be a topic for us to be discussing? Because life is uncertain. Every day we get up and we don't know if the car is going to start. We don't know if we're going to make it to work. We don't know if our loved ones are going to still be here. We really, if you think about it, why is it even a topic? That should be the everyday thing.
It should be understood.
So why do you think uncertainty is so
Shocking.
shocking if that's the basis of our entire
Entire life.
lives.
I think because some of those things we have some control over.
We think
We
we
think
do.
we have some control
think
over,
we
and
do.
that's what it is. We think we have control over it. So when we go to bed at night, you know, we believe we're going to wake up. There's no, you know, we get up in the morning and we're going to swing our legs out of the bed and we're going to get up and we're going to keep moving.
Because
you
on
know.
the law of averages, that's what happens.
That's what happens.
But see, this is what I'm wondering. We think we have a lot more control than we really do.
Absolutely.
Don't you think?
I absolutely think so. I agree with you.
I think we have expectations that certain things are going to happen, and so therefore, because they've happened in the past, they'll continue.
I think
Yes.
something that happened recently for me, as you know about, was when I wasn't feeling well earlier this year. And I remember the first time I passed out, I realized, you know what? I control nothing. Nothing. Because I couldn't make myself not pass out.
Yeah,
I couldn't make
yeah,
myself not get sick. And I think when we have experiences throughout our life where we come face to face with our lack of control, it causes us to then go, okay, let me pause for a minute and start looking at what I do control and being realistic about the things I can't control. You know, I think that for me was a huge wake-up call. I mean, I thought I could live with uncertainty before, but that definitely made me go, you know what, I know what I know. If I open my eyes today, I'm going to do the best I can with the day that I have in front of me.
So you were able to deal with
To
being
deal with
out of control. I remember
That's
a
a
young
great
lady
attitude.
who says that her husband told her he wasn't sure he was in love with her anymore. And she was like, well, you know, I have to know. And I'm like, well, but you don't know. So what are you going to, no, I have to know. I can't live with not knowing. Oh, but you have to live with not knowing because he doesn't know. And she was just like crazed by that idea. How do you live
Yeah,
not
I can
knowing?
understand that.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be really, really tough. So I think some people can get super controlling the less control they have, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Which makes it makes them not very much fun to be around.
No, not at all. Not at
That's
all.
true. Yeah.
And those are the people that usually get labeled the whole term of control freak. They want to know where we're going, how we're getting there, what time we're going to get there. I remember once going back home to visit Jamaica, and a friend said, "I'm coming to pick you up to go to the beach," and I was waiting and waiting and waiting, forgetting I was in Jamaica, right? So he comes 2 hours later, and I'm like, "Where were you? This whole time I'm sitting here." He said, "You're not in New York, you know. This is Jamaica."
So that's a little bit easier with the time.
And I was upset, befuddled, and I was beside myself. I'm like, my time is, and he was like, what were you going to do exactly? We were driving to the beach. And I had to stop for a minute and go, relax. You can't control every moment of every day. Things happen, you know, that throw a monkey wrench, so to speak, into the plans that you've made.
Yeah, well, you know, though, I mean, yes, we are beings, though, that need certainty. You know, babies with their mothers need to know that mom's coming back. If they don't have that, they get really crazed inside.
Yes.
So we're human beings that need certainty, and yet life is not certain.
It's predictability.
Okay, so we need predictability,
Predictability.
not certainty.
Yeah, I don't think you can have.
Right.
I didn't mean to contradict you.
No, I
Just
love
that
it.
word just
No,
came
I
to me
think you're
just now
right.
as you were talking,
Yeah.
because if you can predict that on the law of averages, on the basis of what's been happening, this will probably happen again. Even that we can't really rely on all the time, but if you have some sense of how things will probably go, I think it makes people feel much more confident.
Now, for those who in their faith experience struggle with control and struggle with uncertainty.
What do you mean in their faith experience?
In their religious walk with
Okay.
God, you know, that they want God to prove things or do specific things so that they believe that He is God or that He loves them. You know, God, I've been praying and I've been asking you to send me my spouse. You know, I've been doing all the right things, God. Where is this? Or how come you haven't solved the situation? When the answer doesn't come that they're looking for, when they can't seem to pray God into the right answer or box or corner, then their faith is shaken because what they expected to happen did not happen, or they did all the right things and it did not happen the way they thought it would happen. And then for some it becomes difficult to continue in that faith experience because their faith requires
Oh, so
certainty.
they need a God that's certain somehow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's a sense of trusting without necessarily knowing
The outcome.
the outcome.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've certainly seen many, many people, my days when I used to be a nurse, and so many people who had illnesses and they anticipated that certain things would happen in certain ways. I've even had people say, I'm supposed to die before my spouse dies. Mm-hmm. How can you even predict such a thing? I mean, unless you're going to make it happen, how do these things happen? And God is going to do X, Y, and Z. Well, we don't have that power. So it's really interesting. I think when we feel little control, we try to make a God who will make everything happen in a way that's good for us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you think?
Who, me?
Yeah. Or you, Dilys? I mean, I'm just freewheeling on that one.
No, I actually was sitting here thinking how difficult it is to live with uncertainty of any sort. Mm-hmm. If you go to the big guy and say, or woman, however you define God, as being uncertain, that gets scary. Mm-hmm. But even on the smaller scale of not knowing if your spouse loves you, or not knowing if your children will follow in your footsteps, or not knowing if the car in front of you that you're watching this happened to me this past week. You're watching an accident right in front of you, and in the few seconds, you don't know whether you're a part of that accident or you're not. Okay. That few seconds of uncertainty is chilling.
Absolutely.
You know, and you don't know whether to turn, or if turning will cause your own car to roll, or so whether it's a few seconds of uncertainty or whether you're questioning the whole way that cosmos runs, it's so difficult to live in that space of uncertainty, or being without a job. You know, how do you know?
Right.
People come up there, oh, you're going to find a job, you're good, just relax. Well, maybe not.
Maybe
you
not
might
in this climate,
not find a job in this climate.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking also of this concept called ambiguous loss.
Yeah.
And as we're talking, it's a term that refers to situations where perhaps, let's say, a child's been kidnapped, and you don't know if that child's coming back or is dead, or you might not see them for 10 years, or, you know, some of the things in the news are like this. And so how do you live with that uncertainty of not knowing the outcome, not knowing how to conduct yourself? I mean, do you make their room into a shrine? Do you wait for them to come back? Do you move on with your life? How do you conduct yourself? And I think that's really tough. I had friends who were in prison. Sorry to cut you off. I had friends whose father was in prison. And what they did, they didn't know when he was coming back or if he was coming back. And so every time they would get together as a family, someone would start crying, and so they just quit getting together as a family because they couldn't bear it. And so it had a huge impact on the relationships. So I think these are really painful kinds of situations.
We've talked about the difficulty of uncertainty. I want to spend just a minute talking about the joy. I know that sounds crazy, but
please talk about the joy.
I have a friend who was struggling with cancer, and she was waiting to see if the cancer had recurred. So she's waiting on a new diagnosis, or the absence of a new diagnosis. And I asked her to draw a picture of what that was like, what the uncertainty was like. She drew a picture of herself balancing on a fence. And she said, and I said, what is it like to be like a tightrope walker on the fence, fully expecting that she was going to say, oh, it's terrible. And she said, it is exhilarating. And I said, what?
Wow.
And she said, because right now, the possibilities are endless.
Absolutely.
I might be dying. I might hear that I no longer have cancer. And that possibility, the possibilities being so large, are exhilarating. And I thought,
what
you know,
an outlook.
Absolutely.
In uncertainty, that's what becomes true. The possibilities just explode. And as difficult as it is, you know, those possibilities do have a certain exhilaration about them.
Now, I want to spend more than a minute on it, because what I was thinking as you were talking about even the ambiguous loss and this idea of why are we talking about uncertainty when this is our life is, what will we choose to do? What perspective will we choose to have? Will we think, as your friend expressed it in that drawing, look at the endless possibilities, or keep thinking about
how dreadful it is?
Well, I know this, that I certainly personally wouldn't want someone telling me about the possibilities.
No, dear. It would feel really trivializing.
That's trivializing.
Yeah.
But I do know that within myself, when it's like that, if I can identify that myself, then it's exhilarating. But not if people do it to me.
No, I agree with that.
Don't you think?
Isn't the Chinese character for tragedy, or is it disaster? Part of that Chinese character is opportunity. Have you heard that before?
No, we'll just take
I
it
could be
as a-
totally
as a
wrong,
given.
but this is one of those urban legends,
Right.
maybe, that there's always opportunity in tragedy or in something that happens that we can't predict.
I have a friend, interesting that you were saying that if someone were to tell you that it would bother you, and
Yes.
and yet what I have found recently, I have a very good friend who most of the times now when I say something, she'll say, but look at the opportunities. And I have really appreciated that. She
Oh,
had a
you
car
have?
accident the other day, and she just paid off her car. She was driving, minding her own business, saw this car coming towards her. She said, let me slow down. The car smacked right in front of her car. Airbags deployed. Her car is totaled. And she said after she checked and her daughter was alive, she was okay. She thought to herself, she said, well, this wasn't what I was planning. And she said, but God, what are you up to?
Interesting.
What do you have in store for me? And her sister, when she called her, said, maybe you can get the Lexus you really wanted. And she said, oh, maybe I can.
Maybe
And
she
it was
can.
she's been just saying it to me recently, just saying every time you come up on something that the uncertainty is there and you don't know what to do, she says, why not think about the endless possibilities as opposed to just thinking about, what that is. And it's been helpful.
Let's go to some email questions.
All right.
I am 35 years old and I just found out that I might be pregnant. I'm just going to let that sink in. 35, just find out she might be pregnant. I don't know if she's going to be happy or not. I'm not sure how I can possibly manage being a parent with everything else I have to do. I am completely uncertain about how to do this. Can you help me?
Join the club.
Of course, we don't know whether she's married, not married,
Right.
Yeah.
whether she wants to be pregnant or not. So,
I get a little nervous when parents, or when anyone is absolutely certain that they can do certain things, or that they're going to be great successes as parents, because how can we predict that? There's no room for learning or error, or
so you're saying it's normal?
it's a good thing. It's
Yeah,
normal.
for her to
I
be
think.
worried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be worried if she wasn't uncertain.
I'd be worried if she wasn't worried.
Yes.
Okay, well, I have one. We just found out that our precious grandbaby has leukemia. We are devastated and don't know how we will manage if we lose her. The doctors think she has a 50-50 chance. How do we survive the not knowingness of this? It's driving us to distraction.
Oh, I can only guess. You know, I'm thinking of some of the things that help people have a sense of mastery, and that is to control the things that they can and focus on making life a really rich experience now, because we don't know what's going to happen.
And I think another thing is accept the fact that you have to live with the uncertainty, and then give yourself some time to worry, you know, but give it a time limit. I'll spend X amount of time just really going through all the negatives and all the things but give it a time limit. Don't just wallow in it and live over it for days and for days.
I've heard people say, set an egg timer for 30 minutes.
To worry?
And worry or cry or whatever it might be. And then when it goes ding, then, okay, we're going to shift gears and move on to something more positive.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, Barbara. You said to have mastery over something. I remember a grandmother asking about her baby in the hospital. What could she do? And we said, why don't you knit some booties? And 30 pair of booties at the end of this. But she just knitted away, and the feeling that she was doing
contributing.
something. Contributing in some way.
That is really important. Well, here's one. My brother told me yesterday that he thinks I'm a know-it-all because I try to be clear about what I know. I hate feeling like I don't know things, so I state my opinions, even those that I'm unsure of, clearly and forcefully, so I won't be thought of as a know-nothing. This person really needs to be certain. What do I tell him?
Well, my question is, does she need to tell him anything?
Well, it sounds like there's something about the way she's being that's a little bit off-putting. Clearly and forcefully.
Okay.
Carla, that would be like telling you my opinions. There's just
Okay,
kind
what?
of
Wait, wait, wait.
everything. It sounds
Are you
to-
the brother? So are you right there acting like the brother?
Yes, it sounds
Okay.
to me like everything he says or does is like this pronouncement of fact in a very imperative sense. Do you get that?
Okay, so let me get this. The brother doesn't like how let's say I am.
Well, if you're always
Who-
making pronouncements,
I'm making a
yes.
pronouncement.
It's just tough to take.
But this says, what do I tell him?
Well, you're the one
I'm
who has a
sorry.
problem. I'm sorry. If we're role playing, you're the one with the pronouncement issue. And you're asking the question.
But I mean, okay.
It sounds to me like maybe he needs to say, I'm really sorry, I'm going to have, tell me exactly what it is, give me examples. When do I do that? Maybe there's an issue that this person feels like he or she is really trying to be too controlling about. Does that sound like a possibility?
Yeah, I guess being the person, it makes me want to say, you know what? That I don't mean to sound like a know-it-all. It's just me. Deal, in a sense. I don't
Deal
mean to
with
be
it.
unkind, but deal with it. Or if I'm hurting you, then let me know.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I guess what I'm wondering she's anxious. Maybe she's uncertain, and that's how she deals with her anxiety.
It could be.
Yeah.
I know people like that,
Oh,
actually.
sure. They get
That
kind of
just-
weird when they're anxious.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, I think when there is uncertainty, there's all this anxiety, and nobody really
Sure.
knows what to do to manage their anxiety
Sure.
or how
So,
to.
what do we say to people? What are the practical suggestions we have for dealing with uncertainty?
I think pray or depend on your faith. You were going to say
Accept the
something.
uncertainty. Accept the fact that there is uncertainty.
See, that's what I think is powerful, is to say, this is how it is. And there are some parts to this, because when we're uncertain, we're also more vulnerable, which makes us more likable to people, more reachable, and to go with it.
Another one I was thinking of, which we talked about before, was create that worry period. Give yourself
Sure,
a certain amount of
sure.
time.
Yeah.
And challenge the negative thoughts. You know, ask yourself, well, why am I thinking those things? What are the outcomes that I'm so concerned about, and are they that big and so challenging?
Well, that's all we have time for today. We've had a lot of discussion about uncertainty, and we hope this has been helpful to you today on This Life.